Ukraine than any other nation. Hundreds of billions of dollars. We've spent more than 300 billion, and Europe has spent about 100. 100 billion, that's a big difference, and at some point we should equalize. But hopefully we won't have to worry about that. We have other things happening that maybe take that out of the realm of necessity. And while we've given vast amounts of military aid and money in form of grants, much of Europe's contribution has been economic relief structured as loans, for which they'll be repaid. Like the Europeans, I believe that taxpayers in the United States also deserve to recoup the colossal amounts of money that we've sent. The previous administration never even thought of that. They didn't think of a lot of things, like why did they let it start in the first place? That is why we must have an agreement with Ukraine on critical minerals and rare earths and various other things as security. And I think that that's happening. I think we've made a lot of progress. I had a report just given to me before walking in that we've made, Emmanuel, a great deal of progress toward getting that. I've been elected by the American people to restore common sense to Washington and indeed to the world. And I believe strongly that it's in the best interest of the United States, the best interest in Europe, the best interest of Ukraine, and indeed the best interest of Russia to stop the killing now and bring the world to peace. My administration is making a decisive break with the foreign policy failures of the past administration and, frankly, the past. I ran against a very foolish foreign policy establishment, and their recklessness has led to the death of many, many people. Under our administration, we're forging a new path that promotes peace around the world. And when I left office for the first administration, first term, we had no wars, we had no problems. We didn't have October 7th with Israel. We didn't have Russia and Ukraine going at it. We didn't have the problems in other parts of the Middle East. We didn't have inflation. It was a whole different world. And you know what else we didn't have? Millions of people pouring through our borders, many of them criminals released from other nations and put right into our land, murderers and drug dealers, gangs. We didn't have any of that. It's a different time, but now we have it and we're fixing it. We'll fix it all up. We'll get it done as quickly as possible. And we've made a great deal of progress. People are saying it was the best month for a president in our country's history. I hope that's right, but I feel it's right. We've done a lot of things in a very short period of time, 4 weeks. As I've said before, it's my hope that my greatest legacy, however, will be as a peacemaker and a unifier. I want to bring peace, not war. I thank President Macron for joining us today in this urgent work we're doing. And we have some wonderful people up front right here that have worked so hard. Steve Witkoff, thank you very much. And Michael Waltz, thank you. Scott, thank you very much, and JD, thank you. They've really done a job. They worked very hard. It's a real passion to get this war ended. And I'd like to now invite Emmanuel to say a few words, and then we'll take questions. And again, Emmanuel, it's a great honor to have you with us at the White House. Thank you very much, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, dear Donald. Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, je vais dire quelques.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be saying a few words in French. Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear Donald, for your hospitality and for this visit. As you mentioned, we have had the opportunity to meet over the past few years. Since your first term, we've been able to discuss matters in Paris and also here at the White House, and it has always been a great joy to do that, and I would like to commend you. And thank you, Mr. President, for extending this friendship to France and taking part in the ceremony at Notre Dame that you mentioned before. It was a great honor for the French people to reopen the cathedral to the rest of the world, and your presence was a testament to that friendship. As the President said, this friendship dates back to the Revolutionary War, since the beginning of the United States. And whenever we've needed to, we've been able to come together and be on the right side. We've been able to be united to defend peace and sovereignty, namely in the 2 world wars that marked the 20th century, from Lafayette to Pershing and to the many Americans who landed on Omaha Beach. And we spoke earlier before, and you mentioned that one of those gentlemen was able to visit you here, one of the veterans. This is part of history which puts us in the world that we are in today. And as the President just said, there are many challenges in this world. And over the past few days, we have one main objective, which is the geopolitical situation. Mr. President, I really wish to thank you for making changes to your schedule to meet with us so quickly. I think we've made very substantive steps forward during our discussions, and this is a major step in what we're experiencing today. We had a video conference with all of the G7 leaders, which was an opportunity for us to discuss this matter 3 days after the Russian war in Ukraine, and to express our support for President Zelensky to the Ukrainian people, but also to speak and share about our desire for a lasting peace. This is what we have spoken about very forcibly over the past few weeks. We thought that this war was only going to last a few weeks when it broke out in 2022. We admire greatly the courage of the Ukrainian people. And Mr. President, I wish to thank you for this. You mentioned that there are responsibilities on Europe's side, and indeed, we have invested $128 billion in aid to Ukraine and the Ukrainians. Ukraine has been able to hold the front of our collective security. It's fought over these past few years for its independence and for its sovereignty, but also for our collective security, because I think that no one in this room wants to live in a world where it's the law of the strongest and international borders can be violated from one day to the next by anyone. Over the past few hours, and as you mentioned this, Mr. President, we've been able to see a few things take shape. First of all, allow me to commend you on your decision to work with President Zelensky and to conclude this agreement that's so important for the U.S. and Ukraine on rare earths, critical minerals, but also having substantive conversations with President Zelensky during this key phase of achieving this deal, which is a major commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, and I think that's very commendable. We also have a shared desire to build peace. We will have this responsibility. This is 10 years after the war started in Crimea, and then we saw the events in the Donbas region and along the northern part of the country. We want to save lives. We want to bring prisoners back and bring back families and children, because there's also humanitarian tragedy affecting the Ukrainian people. We had lengthy discussions with the president, and we spoke about our desire to bring an end to conflicts, to have a truce that is measurable, verifiable, and that enables negotiation of a lasting peace, where we will discuss not only Ukraine's reconstruction, its territories, but also the security guarantees, meaning maintaining peace over the long term. As I said to the president, we've experienced peace accords that were only ceasefires without ensuring security guarantees, Minsk I and II. And we want to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I know that the president has expressed the desire to be a player for peace in the region. I've spoken with some 30 European leaders and allies in recent days. We want to bring together these allies, and share the same vision. This peace must not mean a surrender of Ukraine. It must not mean a ceasefire without guarantees. This peace must allow for Ukrainian sovereignty and allow Ukraine to negotiate with other stakeholders regarding the issues that affects it. but it is also a country in which we need to shoulder our responsibilities so that we ensure security and stability for Ukraine and for the entire region. And for us Europeans, this is an existential issue. We also spoke about these issues at length with the President. We've worked with President Zelensky and gotten to some of the details of the various phases of the negotiation, and we've also been able to speak about some of this work with our British partners to talk about deployments of peace forces on Ukrainian soil, which are part of these security guarantees. Other countries are ready to join in this effort. Solidarity and support from the U.S. will be crucial to this, and I thank you, Mr. President, for beginning to work with us on this issue. And the agreement that you are preparing to sign with Ukraine and with all these discussions we've had are very solid guarantees that we are understood and that we have the same wish, peace as soon as possible, lasting, solid peace for everyone, and the renewal of an international situation where we are all able to shoulder our responsibilities, Europeans shouldering their responsibilities alongside their American allies who will shoulder their own responsibilities. I also wanted to be very clear, Mr. President, about Europe's commitment. We have committed to building a lasting peace. As Europeans, we have committed to being stakeholders in these security guarantees. And we are also well aware that Europeans need to do more for security in Europe, for defense in Europe, and to more fairly share the security burden that your country's been carrying for so many years. Mr. President, you know how much friendship I show towards you and I have towards you since your first term. Europe is very clear-eyed about this. We know what we need to do as Europeans, given the threats surrounding us and the responsibilities that we must shoulder. We spoke about the Versailles Agenda, which allowed the Europeans to take a historic step and increase their investments. Europeans are ready to do even more and to go even farther. And several leaders said that to me before I came here to meet you. Mr. President, dear Donald, you spoke about this peace through strength. We fully share that because we must recognize